Raptors Weekly for the week of January the 19th. It is. We're recording this on the Sunday night. The Raptors lost to the Pelicans. Who saw this one coming, Andrew?
I'm in such good moods about how the games this week went.
Well, you're a Packers fan, right? So,
so that was a nice little icing on the cake. That it's okay. It's been a terrible week for the Raptors and a bad month in general. But the Packers are going to the Super Bowl, so that's no.
Yeah,
that's not what happened.
Weren't they up like 19-0 or something like that?
I don't know if they dominated, but they won hands down 57 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And then they gave up 15 points in the last 3 minutes and lost in overtime.
Yeah, to me, they lost this game because they couldn't convert on their early red zone opportunities. I think they got 3 points when they should have gotten 7, and one was an interception. I think that hurt them more than the last 10 minutes or whatever.
They got really conservative with the clock. I hate the approach from a coach in football where you have a chance where if you just get 1 or 2 first downs, you kill the game, and instead they just call 3 conservative runs up the middle to try to put as much time off the clock as they can and then just hope the other team doesn't beat them. I don't know why everyone is so willing to give the other team a chance instead of take a slight risk on your own behalf to try and end the game when you have control.
It's almost like when the Raptors have like a lead and Lou Williams tries to dribble like 22 seconds off the clock because he wants to just run the clock down even though there's like 6 minutes left, and it comes back to bite them.
It's true. It is very similar to trying to eat 5 minutes away 24 seconds at a time.
Yeah. And my day started off pretty well, actually.
Okay.
I was watching Arsenal and Man City, and Arsenal actually beat them 2-0. So that was a whopping start to the day. And I was cheering for the Packers, too, because I don't like Richard Sherman too much. So I was cheering for them, and that went south. And then it was the Indy New England game, which you haven't seen yet, but I know the final score of, and you're going to watch that right now after this podcast. So before you watch, who are you a fan of? Like, who do you want to win?
I want to watch a really entertaining game.
Okay.
It ruins the atmosphere of the game for me if I know the final score. I'm not one of those people who can DVR something and then go back and watch it. As soon as I know who wins, I don't want to watch it.
All right, sounds good. So, man, let's talk some Raptors because that's what we're here to do. And let's start with the Pelicans game, which was let's start at the end with this one. Some controversy. Game tied. Let's forget why that game was tied at home against against the Pelicans, missing Anthony Davis and Jrue Holiday. Game is tied. Tyreke Evans has the ball. Tyreke Evans can shoot. Tyreke Evans can drive, though. Andrew, who do you think is the Raptors' worst defender to put on Tyreke Evans with the game on the line?
Let me see. I mean, Grievous Vasquez is pretty bad, so he wouldn't be on the floor. A defensive-minded coach would probably sub offense, defense. So I'm not sure. I don't know.
So were you as shocked as I was when I saw Vasquez checking Evans up top?
I was ill-pleased. I feel like New Orleans had made it clear that their game plan was to give Tyreke the ball and let him try to drive in like it was an old Sacramento Kings team, and we did nothing to adapt to that, and we gave him the lane. We didn't bring help until it was far too late. If Tyreke Evans wants to take that shot, awesome. Great. You're a 25% three-point shooter. Go for it. But we gave him not only a bad defender, but a wide open lane.
Yeah. And I don't know if we did bring help. We just kind of reacted to what was going on. It wasn't like it was preconceived help. It was just like, oh my God, he's almost all the way to the rim. Better move our bodies and try to pretend like we're going to block the shot. And Dwane Casey was asked after the game, what about James Johnson? Wouldn't he be a better fit? And his response kind of pissed me off even more because I would have kind of accepted, hey, I forgot about James Johnson. That would have been more understandable to me than what he said, which was basically, yeah, I thought about James Johnson. I had a good think about it, but then I decided Vasquez was the better option. Like, he had a chance to correct this, and like he specifically wanted Vasquez to be guarding Evans, which makes me even more mad.
I don't understand the decision-making process he makes in a lot of these in-game scenarios. I think he is a great coach in a lot of other ways, but the way he decides to go about punishing people and sending them to the bench and so rarely doing an intelligent offensive defensive switch, it is difficult to understand.
Yeah, same here, man. I'm literally actually speechless. We got to talk about Terrence Ross a little bit here because he's been having one of those stretches where he plays a little bit, is so bad, and he doesn't see the floor again. So let's take two angles at this. From a basketball point of view, yeah, it's probably not a good idea to have him on the court because he's been shit. But from the other perspective, he's a young guy. Like, how much is him losing confidence because of Casey's management of him an issue at this point where, like, he didn't see the floor in the second half at all today? Like, do you think that affects his confidence going forward, or is this like tough love?
No, I think it clearly affects his confidence going forward. I think that's been the biggest part of the lacking development for Terrence Ross and Jonas Valanciunas that we've seen in the last few years has just been the way that their personalities have been managed, the way their minutes have been managed. Anytime either one of them messes up, they either hang their heads down or JV will look towards the bench expecting to get yanked. So much of coaching, especially at a high level, is managing personalities and developing someone's confidence. And I think a lot of guys, especially the older guys, don't like the idea of buying into that. It's sort of a tougher mentality. It's you need to take care of yourself, be a man mentality. And, like perhaps that worked at a certain point in time. But if you look at the best coaches, the guys who have won the most championships, I don't think that that's the outlook Phil Jackson took. I don't think that's the outlook Greg Popovich has taken. I don't think that's the way that Pat Riley worked with his players. So if you're looking at the guys who've got legacies, like a Doc Rivers is another guy, guys who have multiple championships and who have a great track record of developing people and having guys who bleed to play for them. They're not guys who punish you and who have no interest in pulling you up there, and they're mad if you're not there. And I think that is lacking right now.
And he says the right things. Even in his last two press conferences, he said that, yeah, we're not done with Terrence Ross yet. Like, we got to give him all the support he needs and all that. But then again, you bench him for the second half. I'm not saying Terrence Ross would have made a big difference here. I'm just saying from a confidence perspective, it might be hurting him. But additionally, what felt like a kick in the teeth here in the Pelicans game was that Jonas played 28 minutes and Alexis Ajinca played 34 and was 10 for 13. And a lot of those buckets came in the fourth quarter without Jonas in there. Like, how did they make you feel?
Yeah, if you watch on NBA.com, they've got the highlight video up already for this game, and about 30 seconds of it is just the Pelicans coming back in the fourth quarter. And I think the 20 points in the paint the Raptors gave up in the fourth quarter, and all of the highlights are Patrick Patterson and Tyler Hansbrough just easily getting scored around down low.
Yeah. So former Raptor, I should add, Alexis Ajinca, Frenchman, which we cut. I think we traded him or something. Doesn't freaking matter. Let's rewind a little bit. The Pelicans game was a disaster. Before that, it was Atlanta, though, and this was billed as one of those games where, yeah, the Raptors have been struggling, but here comes Atlanta, winners of 10 straight. If we can get this win, maybe things aren't so bad, and we're just in a funk. But Atlanta came in here and made a very loud and clear statement, which was kind of heard across the league.
Yeah, Atlanta's been making a pretty loud statement for 2.5 months now. I mean, they're 26-2 in their last 28 games now. They won again today, so I guess it's 27, I think. I mean, they depending on what part of the Chicago Atlanta game you're watching today, they were punking Chicago for certain parts of the game. They're a masterpiece offensively right now.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much to talk about in that game, only because it was just a masterclass by the Hawks, and the Raptors never really had a chance. I just think that we have these stretches in games now where we turn the ball over like 3-4 times in a row, and it gets run back every time, and suddenly you're looking at a 14-point deficit. And that's what happened in Atlanta in the second quarter, where the Raptors kind of came back after their slow start. But, Lou Wills and Vasquez, like, people know that this guy's going to go left, or I'm talking about Williams. He's going to either take a shot or he's going to get trapped and look to pass back to the top of the key, and you just got to be there. And sure enough, that's how the turnovers happen, and the Hawks really punched us in the face in that second quarter. It wasn't even a game in the second.
No, there's two things I took away from that second quarter. The first thing was that one of the reasons why I think our offense is also starting to slip back, and I wrote a little bit about this in the post-game coverage of that game, was that the Raptors' niche offense is based on trying to get specific shots for the guys on the team where they like the ball. And there's not a great deal of creativity or spontaneity in how they get those shots. And I think that what we're seeing is a lot of the rest of the league is starting to adapt to what they're going to do, and they're taking those shots away quicker, and they're closing the gap sooner. And there's not a lot of release valve options. There's not a lot of ball movement to find something else after that once that's gone. And that looks to be a problem. The other thing I took from that quarter was, I don't know if you felt the same way watching it. This is the first time I remember watching this team play, the Raptors, and looking on their faces and looking at the body language and the clips over from the bench and thinking that none of them thought that they could win this game.
Yeah.
All the fourth quarter comebacks they've had, all the times they've started slow and turned on the second half, no matter who they're playing, it looks like they always think they can win or are fighting for it. In this game, looking at even Lowry's face on the bench, I don't think any of them expected to win that game.
Why is it though? Like, why such a dramatic turn of like emotional response to losing? Because like at the time when they were facing Atlanta, they had lost like 5 of 7, which is not like a 16-game losing streak like the Knicks do. It's a 5 of 7 cold stretch. It shouldn't warrant a response that, oh my God, we can't win this game because we're down 9 in the third quarter. Like, why do you think like the confidence and the body language has dipped so hard so fast?
I think there's been a lot of talk about the team sort of getting to a place where they bought into the idea of how great they were a little bit too much.
Overconfidence.
And then I think that's sort of come crashing back down to earth, where we thought we were great. We thought we could hang with anyone. And in that Atlanta game, I think they all realized we are not as good as this team.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just that we're not playing well. It's not that they're hitting shots. We are not as good as they are.
Yeah, there was a team meeting after the Atlanta game, and where that word came up a lot, overconfidence, where I think Kyle Lowry called the team meeting. And one of the things they talked about is that, yeah, I think we might be thinking we're better than we actually are, and it's time to level set. And yeah, I think you're on the money there. That overconfidence is a huge thing. But against New Orleans, 2 days later, just a lethargic start, and just disappointing.
If the idea is that overconfidence isn't the only problem, it is certainly a part of the problem. But what part of that overconfidence? The issue with that is that there's no adaptation. There's no interest in changing what's causing the problems, what's causing the inefficiencies, and what is just not working on defense. So if you try to play without an ego, if you try to realize you need to work at it, you're not that great, that's all well and fine, but you still need to fix the problems, and that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the offensive and defensive issues in part 2 of the podcast, but let's just quickly run down the other games of the week. Philadelphia marked the return of DeMar DeRozan. He looked solid, very composed. Again, it's the Sixers, but still, he looked very... he didn't rush his shots. He paced himself really well. He shot a high percentage, and he looked ready. And he looked like he hadn't missed a day.
He's been great in every game he's been back so far. He looks like he's playing much more thought out. The game seems to be a little bit slower to him mentally, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's having sat on the sidelines for a bit, you kind of get to see the game in slow motion rather than be part of it. And I think he's taken those lessons and applied them on the court since he's come back, which has been fantastic. And he was, again, good today against New Orleans too. It's just that we had failings in other areas, which we'll talk about soon. The other game was the Pistons, who were also winners of 8 straight at the time, I think. And the Raptors lost that one 114-111. What I recall from that game is Kyle Lowry really struggling and getting burned by Brandon Jennings, and then Dwane Casey trying to put Terrence Ross on Brandon Jennings, and that didn't work. Just overall, we just couldn't handle, much like against Tyreek Evans, dribble penetration.
Dribble penetration has been a problem, and anytime you have a series of actions that are causing driving kicks and opening up wide open threes, that's what this defense has been vulnerable to pretty well all year, but especially in the last few weeks.
And from that game, do you recall that game, man? Like, it just seems like ages ago, eh? Detroit.
It does. This is a long week.
I know, eh? 4-game
week.
Let's just move on from Detroit since we can't properly remember that game. But let's just say that the Raptors lost a home game to the Pistons, the Red Hot Pistons, and much like the Atlanta game, this was a game where if they had won it, it would have meant something. But unfortunately, they ended up losing it. I just remembered why this game was special, Andrew.
What's that?
14 for 15, Jonas Valanciunas for 31 points,
Played
and
great.
he got 2 touches in the third and fourth quarters of that game. Like from like the 9-minute mark of the third quarter all the way to the end of the game, he got 2 touches and he scored on both of them, and that was the end of it.
We don't want him feeling overconfident, Zarar.
14 for 15 overall. And he doesn't get touches. We don't call plays for him. We call plays for like Kyle Lowry going 1-on-1, who was 3 for 12 in the game. Let's talk about this. I'm glad I remembered this, don't you?
Yeah. He looked fantastic that game. I mean, this is not something new for whenever he has been good. We've not gone to there has been no game.
This is old news, actually, isn't it?
Properly. Yeah, this is nothing new. This is just the most exasperating example. Yeah. And yes, he looks bad sometimes. And yeah, he's not learning the rotations on defense, even if it isn't the scheme that fits who he is. But still, you need to make something. You need to give him the opportunity to grow, and you need to use him when he's actually doing well. And none of those things happen.
Yeah. So Valanciunas, if you're listening, our condolences for not getting the right playing time and touches, despite being 14 for 15 in the game. We're sorry. And with that, we're going to conclude part 1 and come back and talk about some deeper systemic issues relating to the Raptors. All right, welcome back to part 2 of Raptors Weekly, where we promised that we would look at deeper issues relating to the Raptors. And let's start with that. Let's start with offense first, because we've seen a dramatic dip in our offensive production over the last month or so. After being number 1 in the league for so long, we've dipped. We're like 25th in the league over the last 10 games. From my view, what's gone wrong is that, and in simple terms, the one-on-one play that was working early on has been adapted to by other teams. They know what's coming, and we haven't really been able to find plan B.
Mm-hmm. Well, the one-on-one play has changed how it's happening, too. I mean, to start the season off, the Raptors were still in the bottom 10 in the league as far as assist percentage went, but their offense was so efficient because, A, they were getting to the line a ton. They were especially getting to the line a ton from weird areas. They were shooting a high percentage when they were playing one-on-one because it wasn't just give the ball to Kyle and clear out. It wasn't just let Lou Williams slowly dribble up the court and do his thing. I mean, it was to a certain extent for Lou Will on the bench units, but not to nearly the same extent. What the Raptors were doing offensively was running a few subtle actions, some side-to-side, some dribble handoffs that would make the defense bend before having someone like DeMar or Kyle or whoever it may be run the one-on-one action that they like from the spot on the floor where they're comfortable. What they're doing now is forcing someone to try to get to that space on their own, or they're just going right to it and having the defense set where they can bring help more quickly, where they can close out. And they're taking more challenge shots, and that's why the percentages are going down.
Dwane Casey spoke about pregame before the Pelicans. He said that, like one of the plays where they get the highest points per possession is the drag screen, which is basically the trailing big setting a late screen and the guard kind of using it. It's barely even a play, man, because it's almost like a natural action of playing basketball. Yeah, it's like a guy is late coming up the court, and you use him, and you catch the defense kind of off guard, and you get a quick jumper or you get fouled just because the defense is not yet aware of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to adapt to. Like, once you realize that that's what's happening, it's very easy to stop. And in the Pelicans game, you notice that they tried some of that, but the Pelicans knew that the guy coming down the floor is going to be used as a screen, and sure enough, they stuck to him, and they played the action really well. In addition to this, there's an element of, I find, maybe not selfishness, but Kyle Lowry taking a little too much ownership than he needs to. I don't think he needs to necessarily do so much over dribbling, take such contested shots. I think he needs to trust his teammates a little bit more, and maybe that's during that stretch on the West Coast where nobody was really playing that well, and he kind of took over and won a couple games. Maybe he feels he needs to do that every day.
I mean, he has taken less shots per game since DeMar's come back, but I think you're certainly onto something. I think it's a combination of him needing to let other people carry a little bit more of the weight, but I don't think he sort of took this weight and put it on himself because he just wanted it for him. I think that especially when DeMar was down, no one was doing anything. Like, there was nothing happening, and they were just calling ISOs for him. But also there were times where nothing was going on. There was no offense, and there's 5 seconds left on the clock, and he had to do something. Yeah. And I think that when he excelled so well early on in that role, unfortunately, instead of people realizing that they needed to help him out in that and they needed to address the problems with the offense then and figure out how to not rely on him, instead, the guys on the floor got used to relying on him, and they've moved around less as a result.
Yeah, that's certainly a much more coherent take. In the absence of like a set offense or any structured offense, you're bound to see problems that we're seeing today. Yeah. Like, we expect to see Lou Williams go like 2 for 10 and Vasquez go 4 for 13 because these guys, like, if all they're doing is going one-on-one, the percentages will eventually go against them. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing is happening. And there's no like set offense there to rescue these guys, and they're kind of left to their own devices, and we're seeing the results of that over the last couple of weeks where they're trying. Like, I don't doubt the effort of any single Raptor on offense, that they're trying to help the team. They're not playing selfish basketball. I don't think it's selfish basketball. They're just trying to fill a vacuum of offense, and they're filling it the best way they know how, which is one-on-one. And that's not so much on the player, that's so much on the system that's supposed to support them.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, It's also worth noting, as much as we complain about the lack of adaptation and how them growing and changing what they're doing, it's really difficult to do that in the NBA, to change on a large scale what you're doing systematically on either end of the floor, because I think a coach and the coaching staff is reluctant to give up on what they're doing. They want to try and tweak it a little bit, or really see it out, or maybe see that the problem is in execution, not in the plan, because it's so hard to change it. So they hold on to that a little bit longer than they should. But also, there's not enough practice time and enough time with these guys to work on them all together to get them to wholesale change what's going on the floor on the fly. That's going to take time for them, to get to the point where they're willing to do that, which I think we're hoping that they're at now, if they haven't got there already. But it's going to take a while for them to make those changes in the limited practice time they have, and how complicated it is, and needing to get 9 different guys to understand the timing of it.
Let's switch over to defense and talk about that a little bit before we take a break. From my view, again, it's basically we concede way too much dribble penetration. That's so obvious at every position, and not just Vasquez, even DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry. We give up too much dribble penetration, and then we obviously overcompensate and help. That's not by chance. The Raptors' defense is predicated on people helping and people rotating. But I find that more and more as the season goes deeper and players get more tired, we don't seem to have the personnel to actually collapse and then rotate back out and get to shooters. And it's not coincidence that the Raptors are one of the worst in the league in giving up the 3-point shot. Anything else you've noticed there from a defensive point of view?
The trapping's not working. I mean, we're probably the most aggressive trapping team in the league, the way we try to swallow the ball on the wings all the time. And if you're getting a great deal of turnovers that way, then that's fine. But we're playing a defensive scheme not too dissimilar from the LeBron Heat teams, where you're switching a lot and you're trapping on the sides almost constantly in order to try to get turnovers, and then you're running into the 3-point line to try to take that away. But the problem is the league has really adapted to spacing, and everyone is attuned to the point now that 3-point shooting is the most important thing probably in the league. So teams are spread out and they have the next pass there, and the Raptors are just getting exposed because you can't move around that quickly, especially not with the lineup they have, and get turnovers at anywhere near the rate required to make up for giving as many wide open 3-pointers as they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Raptors currently stand at 22nd in the league in defense, conceding 108 points per 100 possessions. The number one team in the league in defense, Golden State Warriors. I mean, they've kind of mastered the art of playing run and gun, but at the same time, not being a sieve on defense.
No, they play smart defensively. They're not the most defensively talented team in the world. I mean, Andrew Bogut has been an absolute force for them inside this year. I think he's keeping opponents to 38% field goal percentage inside, but they play very wise defense. They try to give up as few opportunities as possible. They play really, really smart, and they move around much more subtly than the Raptors do. I think that Casey is a great defensive mind. I think he's proven that, and I think the scheme that he plays is very interesting, but I don't think it fits the personnel, and I think it's more important to adapt to the people you have on the court than it is to try and make those pieces fit a system you have in mind.
Someone might argue with you that the reason he's being hailed as a defensive genius at times is because he played zone against the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I mean,
but let's not get into that. Do you want to get into that now?
I don't think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, let's shelf that one and come back with part 3 and have a quick look ahead to the week. Welcome back to part 3 of Raptors Weekly. A 4-game week is in store for the Raptors. They start off on Monday in Milwaukee. That's going to be a back-to-back, obviously. Then you got Wednesday in Memphis, tough game. Then you got Philadelphia on Friday, and then the Detroit Pistons on Sunday at home. This is a stretch where they play 4 or 5 on the road because they're going to play the Pacers next. But let's start with Milwaukee. We played them once before. We won by 42. Milwaukee just came back from London after whipping the Knicks on an entirely different continent. I mean, the 42-point game's probably fresh in their minds, or at least they remember it because it's hard to forget. And the Raptors are kind of there for the taking, man.
I don't think Larry Sanders remembers that game.
No.
He's high as shit.
Anti-drug, 10-game suspension by the league.
He wants to smoke weed more than he wants to be an NBA player. I don't think there's any mystery about that. I don't get it.
And the NBA past is littered with examples of players who have, chosen that option and has never worked out.
No, it doesn't. Look, you should always choose millions of dollars over smoking weed. Like, I think Ricky Williams would even himself make that advice.
Yeah, he doesn't remember it. And I don't know. You want to talk about the Bucks, man?
Look, the Bucks are fun to watch, but you should not be losing to this team.
But the Raptors, I'm writing the pregame for this.
Okay.
And I was just looking at their previous box scores and the way Brandon Knight's playing. Brandon Knight poses the exact same problem as Tyreke Evans does. The guy can't shoot from outside, but he can drive, and the Raptors can't defend the penetration. So rinse and repeat on Monday night against Milwaukee. I'd say the Raptors are there for the taking.
How far the mighty have fallen when a few weeks ago we were talking much differently than to a point where we would be deeply concerned about the prowess of Tyreke Evans and Brendan Knight. Jeez.
Oh. So Milwaukee just called the game. A loss win. What do you think?
I got to say win. If we're sitting here doing Sunday night podcasts saying Milwaukee, that's a loss, then that's enough.
I'm going to say Milwaukee loss, and not just a loss, but I think it's going to be a blowout. I think the Raptors are so there for the taking right now. Their confidence is so low. The Bucks are long and athletic, and they drive, and they're at home, and they're pumped from an overseas trip. I don't know.
They're pumped from an overseas trip. Have you ever gotten off a cross-Atlantic flight and thought to yourself, I am full of energy?
It's good to beat an NBA team on different soil and come back home victorious. It's like they're coming from a battle and they've won. That's what they're thinking.
I've never beaten an NBA team on foreign soil. I can't speak to this, but you might be onto something.
No. And then we got Memphis, who we have beaten this year, I believe, on the days we're going good.
Nah.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, right?
Here's what we can look forward to about this game. Jonas Valanciunas will probably get a lot of minutes, I would hope.
In the first half.
In the first half, that's right. The last time we played them, Chuck Hayes played remarkable defense, actually, on Marc Gasol, who that was part of the 2-week stretch to open the season. I mean, Marc Gasol's been brilliant all year, but there was like a 10-day stretch where Marc Gasol was just brilliant offensively, hitting shots over everyone, and he hit 3 or 4 in a row just with Chuck Hayes basically forcing him out of bounds, and he was just leaning off, shooting jumpers like Kevin Durant. I didn't enjoy it.
Well, Memphis, what we can tell you is they've had a couple of big wins, unlike the Raptors in the recent past. They beat Portland and also beat Phoenix, and they actually hung with Atlanta for a while there, and then they lost to them as well. So again,
Memphis is good.
Yeah, Memphis is good. They've always been consistent. We have beaten them, I think, 3 straight now because we swept them last year. But just based on team trends right now, it's hard to pick the Raptors in this game, especially on the road. And given that the Raptors are having issues rebounding again and giving up second chance points and turnovers, guys like Tony Allen, and they can feast on us. And remember, last time we beat Memphis, Tony Allen didn't play because they had that whole food poisoning thing. So
yeah, was Matt Moore reporting that there might have been a player or two absent from the Memphis lineup that night with the flu? I think I briefly remember something about that coming up and maybe continuing to come up on Twitter every day. Sid.
I'm surprised they didn't change the banner at CBSSports.com to Tony Allen did not play against the Raptors.
No, you know what's weird about that? The Matt Moore thing is, for weeks now, it's gone like the other way. Like I'll give him
He's
this.
Overcompensating?
He brilliantly manages the Twitter angst against him in that he's gone for weeks now. He's actually just retweeting things that people say, like throwing hate at him for the Raptors. Yeah. And he just sort of counters that, like, actually, no, they're good. Like he's been saying nothing but good things about the Raptors for weeks, even through this whole slide.
Yeah, he's also retweeting the Raptors probably account a lot.
Okay.
Maybe he's compensating for it.
Are we trolling him? What's going on?
No. We're not even talking to him, but he just finds us and retweets us. So that's good.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, good. Up next is Philadelphia. We're not going to talk about Philadelphia again. All right. And then
Joel
we got
Embiid's getting fat.
And then we got, is he?
Yeah, they sent him home from the road trip. Apparently he's up to $3 bills. He just does no interest in doing his workouts, which apparently at this point include underwater treadmill workouts and vigorous walks. That's all he can do with his foot, and he's displeased with them, which, I don't remember the last time I enjoyed vigorous walks throughout a road trip.
Work ethic was never, when they were scouting him during the draft, work ethic was never a huge plus.
No, I'm struggling. Let's not make Danny Ferry jokes and move on.
All right, then we got Detroit, the post-Josh Schmidt Detroit Pistons, who've won many in a row, and they just recently lost to a really shitty team. I forget which one. New Orleans they beat, yeah. So New Orleans, they lost to, I should say. What are you going to talk about Detroit?
Let's see if we can contain the unstoppable Brendan Knight. This is the lessons that we learned from Tyreek Evans.
Brandon Jennings, you mean?
Brandon Jennings. Yep, Brandon Knight plays for Milwaukee now because he got traded a very long time ago.
So guys, we're not going to talk about Detroit. We're too down. Like let's just get to it when we get there. The Raptors are in a funk.
It's heavy.
It's heavy. It's weighing on us, especially on Andrew, whose Packers lost today, and he's about to sit through Indy versus New England. What needs to happen this week, Andrew, for next week's podcast to be cheerful?
I could
the bare minimum that needs to happen this week for next week's pod to be a little happier.
We need to start fixing problems. I think that, look, a 60-win season is not the ultimate goal here. I think that if the Raptors can go 500 this week, but demonstrate that they're making improvements, they're making changes that make sense, then I'm willing to take that, because I think that at this point, it's more than just a confidence issue. There are serious problems on the court that they need to fix as a team and in the way that they play. And it's going to take a while to fix them, and I need to see them starting to address that.
Do you see Dwane Casey getting fired this season under any circumstance?
I don't know. I don't know who they would bring in who would be better, and I don't see them deciding to swallow a long-term contract that they just gave to him.
Like somebody on the site pointed out, exact same scenario as Sam Mitchell. A coach does really well for 1 year and we give him a 3-year deal, and then he's not that good.
Yeah, Dwane Casey was good for more than 1 year.
Yeah, he was.
Sam Mitchell was a bad coach and a worse TV guy.
But I think the bar has kind of raised for Casey, right? Like he came in as a coach when the bar was basically, can you get effort out of this team that sucks so bad? And he was awesome at that. He got the Raptors to play some really motivated basketball, even though there was no positive outlook for the team as a whole, even the franchise as a whole for the last couple of years. So I give him full credit for that. But now that the stakes are kind of raised, it's not about just getting the effort out, which he still is, by the way. It's elevated to like a basketball context, like an X's and O's context. And right now, I think maybe he's learning on the job.
I think that this is a pretty dynamic job where you're always probably learning on the job. You're trying to apply your experience to it, but it's not the same problems you're hitting over and over again. It's new problems. Otherwise, you would have already adjusted the system to adapt for that. I think that, look, if they continue to play at this level and they get worse all year and they stagnate and they never improve, then that's a different conversation. But I think he's got a pretty long leash to try to turn this around, and I have a fair bit of faith that he will to a large extent.
All right. So, Andrew, just promise to text me after you watch the Indy New England game.
Okay.
All right.
I'll let you know.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.